didn't take notes on this one. This is just going to be totally off the cuff. So
Yeah, I didn't take
Yeah.
notes either. I don't usually take notes on the first viewing. I also
yeah,
usually don't start watching clips of SNL during the movie, but this movie had a lot going for it.
Yeah.
Hey guys,
That
welcome
was my big
to.
note where I'm having a hard time paying attention and way more interested in my notes than this warehouse scene, or two big ones.
Yeah. Hey guys, welcome back to the Bomb Squad. We're doing a special episode, a special podcast exclusive, and maybe I'll put it on YouTube, making it not special at all, which kind of fits with the movie we're about to talk about. So today we've brought back William Murdock, Twister
Hello.
connoisseur.
Yeah.
William, I did actually talk to someone on Instagram and they're like, I went to visit all the Twister locations and also I went to the Twister Museum and I was like, Twister locations? You just went to empty farmland?
Yeah.
the
What
Midwest.
does that
Yeah,
mean?
Yes, this grass. It's
And then I
everywhere.
and then I asked him if he got 8 coffees and he was like, what? And I was like, "Pff, what a fucking fake fan you are,
Yeah.
buddy.
Nerd, not nerd,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, we brought back William, and today we're talking about, podcast exclusive means new release because Andrew doesn't want to deal with copyright issues. And so we're talking the Matrix Resurrections. Sorry,
Oh yeah.
you
I had
had
to check what the
you
name was.
labeled this
Yeah,
Revolutions in like
it's
the
called
recording,
Resolution.
Oh
but
yeah.
Okay,
it is Resurrections. Revolutions is the
it,
third movie.
yeah,
Yeah.
I realized that when I typed it into Wikipedia. Matrix Resurrections is a 2021 release. It is directed by Lena Wachowski. It's also written by Lena Wachowski, David Mitchell, and Alexander Herman. It stars Keanu Reeves, Carrie Ann Moss, and Jada Pinkett Smith coming back. Also, Christina Ricci for one scene, for one weird,
Oh
very
yeah.
like what the hell's Christina Ricci anyway?
I know.
Yeah,
We've also got
What
Doogie Howser.
Yeah, we also. Oh yeah, Doogie Howser's also in it. Neil Patrick Harris.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, and this is obviously a sequel to the Matrix trilogy. Um, William, do you want to describe? Do you want to give us a plot synopsis for this film?
Yeah, sure, sure. So I didn't know anything about this movie going in,
Okay.
except that it was The Matrix. Obviously, I'd seen the trailer. Trailer didn't really give anything away, but
Yeah.
so from what I gathered watching the movie, it's kind of a reboot of everything, and The Matrix Revolutions ended in a way that was showing The Matrix to be cyclical in nature. So
Hmm.
this is now a new version of The Matrix. Things have gone awry between the humans and the machines again in the background. And we start off, and there's an agent who's chasing down Trinity again. It's like an exact replica of the first scene from the first movie. And then this guy is Morpheus all of a sudden. This new guy who was an agent is actually Morpheus,
Yeah.
and he takes a pill, and then they start looking for Neo. Neo ends up so Neo in the real world. Thomas Anderson is now a video game designer who has designed The Matrix, the video game, which is the exact first trilogy. And at one point, he
Right.
is asked if he based the main character on himself, to which he says, a little bit, but it is exactly Keanu Reeves in 1999. So I don't know. Maybe you used a lot of yourself to references. Anyways, Neo is having these psychotic flashbacks where he thinks that he used to be a superhero and that he used to fight crime or fight agents. But he goes to his therapist, and his therapist is just like, "Nah, dude, you're cool." And then it turns out that the Matrix is real. Neo goes back into Zion, and we pretty much rehash the first movie a lot. And then,
And then we
um,
rehash the third movie.
yeah,
it kind of the third and second get rehashed. That's the
yeah,
like. I'm like, I think this was
Well,
intentional, but I don't like it.
and
right.
before we start talking about it, how annoying is it that this movie wasn't called The Matrix Rebooted? Like, it's a perfect opportunity to call. Like,
Yeah,
you're only gonna be able to get away with that in one movie series, and it's literally this one. And they
right. And that's
like,
all they talked about in the first like 45 minutes was just like
yeah,
it was like this all these they went from philosophy in the first trilogy to kind of like art criticism in this one, or rather just a criticism of the Wachowskis'
I
careers.
think I think it was the Wachowskis criticizing Warner Brothers
Well,
basically.
Yes,
yeah, because there's
verbatim. They
that.
literally say that.
So there's that scene in yeah. So in this new Matrix, the original Matrix trilogy has been rehashed into a video game series. So like throughout the movie, we just see characters watching the old movies.
Hmm.
In like, is this a
But
clip show
yeah,
movie?
but they're
What
like
the
they're
fuck?
supposed that I they're like, oh, this is a cutscene from the game, which is funny because it was supposed to be a 1999 game, so it's like, shouldn't it look all shitty in like PS1 era? But whatever,
Yeah,
you know.
they
Oh
had
man, if they
amazing
had
visuals. Yeah,
done if they had redone the movie like using shitty PlayStation graphics,
that would have been
it would have
awesome.
been worth it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that would have been
fully
great.
would.
I mean, I honestly didn't hate the first like 30 or 40 minutes where he's just like a video game guy going to his therapist, just because I was like, okay, this is almost like a pair. It's almost like a Gremlins 2 style takedown of the Matrix. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
Yeah. Well,
I,
and
I,
I,
I didn't
to
mind that.
right.
to
It
be
was kind of
clear, I
fun.
didn't really hate this movie.
Yeah,
I'm struggling to find why it exists, and like I was
yeah,
just I mean there's a certain point where if I'm watching random clips from the trilogy, I'm gonna get bored. Like
yeah. It's the clip episode from any comedy series. It's
yeah,
just like,
like
what
You know
happened in the
what?
last 8 seasons?
Part of the problem too is this movie is framed and edited really, like, I wouldn't say poorly, but very like TV standard. It's like you're
it's
watching like an FX show or something. They keep cutting back to the original trilogy. It's like, don't keep reminding me of how good this used to look,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know.
and like okay, so on one hand, I mean it's a new Matrix, so I don't mind that they've taken like the green color out of it. I mean it was a staple of the Matrix movies, but if your point is that you're in a new Matrix, it makes sense. But like I don't know, like there's that scene at the beginning where they're like on the street and it's like the new Agent Smith talking to the cops, and it's just that scene from the first one where they're like, "No, Commander, your your men are already dead."
Yeah.
And like the lighting just looks so bad. It literally looks like How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah. It definitely was a set. Like everything looked like it was on
Yeah,
like a back lot.
yeah, and like not even a good back.
Yeah. Which I kind of, I don't know. I kind of thought that was okay because like it's kind of like making
It's the
everything feel like a
Matrix.
dream, making it kind of feel like empty but also lived in at the same time.
Yeah, it's
It was kind of
tricky. I
okay.
don't know.
Yeah. Right. I
It's
think that's what we're kind of like getting at is like everything about this movie was like you either loved it in like 1 second and then you hated it for like the next second. It was like my emotions were constantly like just flip flopping. I never knew
yeah.
what I
Yeah,
was experiencing.
yeah, like and yeah, I mean, because okay, so you meet these new characters, and they're all kind of rehashes of the old character. The only one who's kind of new that's not a rehash is the Bugs character played by
Right.
Jessica Henwick, who's like she's like been obsessed with Neo, and they're like rewatching parts of the original trilogy with new characters, and then she's looking for Neo,
Hmm.
and Neo is like, yeah, he's a video game controller, and he's going to therapy, and his therapist is like, no, you're just a video game guy, and he meets Trinity, but now she's like a married mother of a family, or he doesn't even meet her; he just watches her, right?
Oh
In
man,
the
Yeah.
and
first
her husband is named Chad, and he
Oh my
is a
god, I know.
Chad.
Sad
It's
fuck, dude. Sad fuck.
I love
he
him.
even had like kind of the wedge hair from the Chad meme. It
Yeah.
was too much. No, but I actually did like that because I was like, all right, just make it blatant. Like at one point, he's
Yeah.
literally eating the steak dinner that Cypher eats in the first
Yeah.
one. You know,
And Neil Patrick Harris's cat is named Deja Vu.
Oh my
yeah,
god.
it's
Yeah.
like that's fine. And then it's like if you kind of kept that tone or did something new with it, I like that. But then when he gets out of the Matrix, which obviously gets out of the Matrix, it just kind of becomes a direct sequel to Part Three, where it's like, here's what Zion's up to. It's just like, oh
Yeah.
well, I'm not that interested in this. I don't
Right.
know.
Totally.
William, did you ever see Riddick, the third movie in the Riddick franchise?
Oh, the Chronicles of Riddick, or is it just called Riddick?
No, it's just called Riddick.
I might have, but I don't remember anything from it if I did.
See,
So
well, and like
essentially, no.
Riddick is like the third part, and the first hour of Riddick is like Riddick on his own, and he's like trying to survive on this weird desert planet,
Oh
and
yeah, I
it's
did see
super
that.
cool because
Yeah.
you've never seen Riddick in this situation before. But then, like halfway through, they're just like, "Oh, now what if it's a sequel, or what if we just did what we did in Pitch Black?" And it's like, well, you had something original. Why did you just not stick?
Kind of go to
Yeah.
the drawing
And
board.
that does kind of feel like this movie, where like if they had started it with Trinity and Neo, and like they don't know each other, he's just like a video game controller, and like things are starting to like be weird to him. I think that would have worked better because we're
Yeah.
immediately thrown into like, oh, here's the new Matrix, and everyone knows what it is, and it's like, why would you? What's the reveal here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and just like with Trinity in general, it's like just like you're saying, like if the movie had been like about them reconnecting and like they're the main focus of the story, it would have
Hmm.
been a lot more contained. But like we don't really know anything about Bugs throughout the whole movie. We barely meet
Hmm.
the new crew, and like even in the first movie, we don't really get a lot from like Switch, but like we kind of know who she is and like she's
Yeah,
memorable. Like I don't remember
yeah, we
any
know like
information from the rest
Mouse.
of the crew. Yeah, Mouse,
Tank. Yeah.
I mean,
Dozer.
the fact that we still know their names, even though they're like very one note characters, all of
Yeah,
them, is kind of like I had to look up Bugs' name, even though she's like in half of the movie.
yeah.
I remember just because she says Bugs Bunny and it's Warner Brothers, and I was like, oh,
Oh yeah,
that's
yeah,
the link. Well, okay, let me ask you, like, how do you both feel about? I mean, I think we can all agree the first Matrix is a 10 out of 10 film, but how do you feel
yeah.
about the two sequels, Reloaded and Revolutions?
I think they
Like,
go in order of goodness. I think number one is the best. Number two, like, is still kind of mysterious and
kind of a
cool.
slow descent type of thing.
Well,
Yeah,
and
and Revolutions is like okay, but it's I don't really see it as a sequel to the Matrix one. It's like so just different and like too
Yeah.
Zion, too weird.
yeah, and I, and that's a big thing, and that's why it's kind of hard to compare the Matrix even to its own sequels, because like part one of the Matrix, I mean, it is the Matrix. It's about a guy who wakes up in a computer program, but it
Yeah,
still feels very grounded and very like, oh man,
yeah,
this is like a kind of quiet sci-fi that we're discovering. Where the
hmm,
Matrix 2 and 3, they feel like they're going for an epicness that the original Matrix hinted at, but it kind of feels like the Clone Wars, where it's like it's easy to have a small group of rebels attacking the Death Star. It's hard to show the entire Clone Wars over 3 movies
right.
because we already have an idea of what it should be in our head. And it's like,
Yeah, and you've gone against that kind of.
Yeah.
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 Well,
And it's
let
that
me.
weird thing where the end of the first Matrix, where Neo goes like, I'm not going to tell you how this is going to end, but I'm going to tell you how it's going to begin. And it's like
Oh
such a
yeah.
good,
Hmm.
like, yeah,
In the
it's
phone
like,
booth. Yeah.
yeah, and it's like
So
your
sick.
brain is already making the dots. That's all you needed. And
Yeah.
so to then explain it over 2 movies, it just kind of like takes away some of the and I
It loses the
like both of them.
mystery.
Yeah. And yeah, rewatching them this time, I definitely felt that kind of like, yeah, I mean, even the cool parts don't really justify how like good and like cemented the first one is.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they shouldn't exist essentially. No, and I kind of get that. It's kind of funny. It's almost like the whole like let's throw out all this exposition and world building in the sequels. Kind of reminds me of Jupiter Ascending, which I know they did later. I was like, ugh, you could already see the shades of it in Revolutions.
Yeah.
Just
Well,
them
so
going too far with too much.
yeah.
Well, and it's also that thing where like the Wachowskis have always loved the idea that the Matrix repeats, and even this one is based around that whole entire premise.
Yeah.
And I've never been on board with that idea.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It just kind
I
of feels like a little bit cheap, where it's like, oh, I mean, I guess we're following this one, but it happens all the time.
Yeah, it definitely lowers the stakes because like we can just do this
Hmm.
again. Like
Yeah,
if we mess up this time, we'll get it on the next one.
yeah. And speaking of lowering the stakes, like the whole time you're kind of wondering how like Neo and Trinity have returned from the dead, because they very clearly died in the first one. And I
Yeah,
thought I was gonna be like they're gonna figure out something, but it's like, oh no, we just brought them back to life. I guess we can just
yeah,
leave
it
them.
took a
yeah, it
while.
was very like, oh yeah, we just did surgery really good on you
Yeah.
Yeah,
for a long time.
the
I also, you know
mysterious
what,
Well,
this made me realize too how much Hugo Weaving's presence kind of
oh
yeah.
carries the
yeah,
trilogy when he's not there. I'm like, oh man, like I don't dislike Neil Patrick Harris, or I don't even know the guy who plays Agent Smith in this one. He's not like, bad or anything, but it's like he doesn't elevate it.
Well, before we
Yeah.
talk about that, I think we have to ruin what happens. So, like, yeah, so then Neo wakes up from the Matrix, and then they realize that it's actually his therapist who's the new architect, and he's now called the analyst, and he has taken over the Matrix. And he's created this new Matrix, but he realized that he needs Neo and Trinity for something, I guess.
Yeah,
And
together they're
because
more
you have,
powerful.
yeah, he's like, oh, you need Neo and you need Trinity because they create the duality of the Matrix. But also, if you get Neo, you have to get Agent Smith. So now it's no longer duality; it's now three people, and then also Morpheus, I guess.
Yeah.
Where it's like they never explain. But anyway, so the analyst has been controlling it, and Agent Smith has been running around like trying to figure out how to get around it, and then Neo is just there. And so, like Neo and Agent Smith, but it's not Agent Smith played by Hugo Weaving. It's just like a random guy who's doing a
it's
Hugo Weaving impression.
it's kind of a guy who looks like Glenn Howerton but isn't.
He's the guy from
Yeah.
Mindhunter,
Yeah,
that
it's
Netflix.
Jonathan
Jonathan
Groff.
Groff.
I
Yeah.
never saw Mindhunter.
And also, he keeps calling Neo John, and it's like, no, you call him Mr. Anderson.
Oh,
Yeah.
Tom, yeah.
Yeah, he
Tom.
calls him Tom.
Tom.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just a weird like. Are you? And you know what? Here's the thing, and I thought about this since the Matrix Part Two, is that, and they kind of deal with it in Part Two and Three, but I always felt that bringing Mr. Smith back, even though he's probably one of the most famous characters, was always a mistake to me. Am
Really?
I? Yeah, am I alone in that idea?
I don't know, because I don't think Reloaded would be like, he's probably the best part of Reloaded to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean
just
he's
just him being a dick like is so likable.
Right.
Yeah.
yeah, but I feel like instead of these guys like figuring out how to make it like instead of them figuring out how to make it more interesting by adding a new villain, they just kind of like leaned on the villain. It kind of feels like Pirates of the Caribbean, where it's like, okay, but you killed Barbosa in the last one. I know everyone loves
Mm,
Barbosa, but if you bring him back, you're kind of like eliminating that thread from the first one and making it not as important. And it kind of feels the same way in this, where it's like
You
killing Agent
s-
Smith was such a big part of his life. And I guess, I mean, they make it a big part of his journey, but I don't know. I just wanted more villains, new villains.
mm,
yeah, although I don't know, I feel like the problem with Neil Patrick Harris as a villain is he just kind of is playing his usual kind of smarmy guy, and it's just like there's not really that much menace to it. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
yeah. He wasn't very threatening, and his new bullet time was just extra bullet time, just like going
Right.
yeah.
even slower.
And see, and that's another thing again, like, I mean, I get it. But like, okay, so agents or the architect, his power is now that he can use bullet time and he freezes everything and Neo can't get around it.
Yeah.
But bullet time was like something we saw. And they never named it
Right.
bullet time in the movie. Now it's just named bullet time. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
I
clearly
think
them
video
dealing
games
with
named it
their
bullet time.
right. Well,
yeah.
I mean, and like he's like, oh, I have to please the suits, meaning like the higher machines. It's like obviously it's all just a metaphor for like the studio, but it's like at the same
Yeah.
time, it's like there's really no stakes to this, so I don't know why you want me to be emotionally
Right.
Yeah.
impacted
The
by
whole
it
movie definitely
either.
felt
I
like
don't
a
know.
joke. Like it definitely felt like they were making it to stop Warner Brothers
Yeah,
from doing anything, and they were just like, let's just like fuck you, Warner Brothers. It's like that. It's like that.
Yeah.
Not gonna write you a love song. You wrote it because they
well,
wanted
and that was
a
kind of
love
like, and
song.
I could almost feel like if it's like if you want to make it like a satire of your own movie, like totally do that. That's totally fine. But like one thing you can say about like Reloaded and Revolutions is that it's like okay, even if you don't like the plot or whatever, you're still gonna see like some amazing action scenes, like the highway chase and everything.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
action scenes
Totally.
in this are just nothing.
Yeah.
It's
But
Totally
see,
just
I honestly
forgettable,
would have liked it
boring.
if they're. I mean, I would have liked it if there was no action scenes, and it
I
was
would
just
have liked
Neo
that
and
more,
Trilogy.
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Neo and Trinity like figuring themselves out in the Matrix for like 3/4 of the movie, and then you could throw one in at the end because
Yeah.
yeah, they were garbage.
Yeah, dude.
There,
We
there
needed
was
more
like a
Trinity.
scene. What?
We needed more Trinity the whole movie. Like,
Yeah.
with her and it being like the Deus Ex Machina just like type figure at the end, like that would have been so sick to see them both like gaining powers and like her becoming the new bullet time, like her powers becoming the new awesome driving force, and like seeing her develop, like her being the star at the end. I don't think that they really earned that
It wasn't
necessarily.
earned. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
What?
I would agree, and I almost see it because it's kind of like, oh, and then I guess we spoilers, but she actually develops the godlike flying powers at the end, and that's how they kind of get out of it.
Yeah.
Um, and it's almost like they're saying like, oh no, we don't want it to be about just this one man doing it. We want it to be about like both of them because she's like her own person. It's like, yeah, but she's barely in the movie, and the whole thing is about rescuing her. So you still
Yeah.
made her like a damsel in
And
distress
Right.
for like
Totally.
90% of it.
not
Yeah.
only that, but the original Matrix trilogy only works if Trinity is there. Like she's very much part of winning the war. Because
Yeah.
she like not only did
Right.
she bring Neo back to life in the first one,
Hmm.
she's the one who takes him to the center of the city where she gets killed. Like
Yeah.
it's not like, oh, Trinity was this character we had to fix. It's like Trinity has always been an important part of the revolution or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Just
So
destroying
it kind of felt like they were fixing a problem that wasn't. It kind of felt like in Rogue One where they're like, "Oh, we're gonna explain why there's a little port in it," and it's like, "Oh, you didn't need to explain that. It was a metaphor for capitalism." So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like-
by
yeah.
explaining it, you're kind of taking that away.
Right.
Um, yeah, and like that's my react. I mean, there's that part where also when the first time that the architect like freezes Neo and he's like, "Look, you can't even do anything. You're powerless against this." Did you guys like, "Oh, Agent Smith is gonna be able to get around this"? Is that like the first thought that came in your head?
Uh, no, but
I'd
Okay.
I can see
honestly
that
kind
being
of forgotten about Smith at that
yeah.
point, so I didn't even
As soon as they
consider.
well, and as soon as they brought him back, I was like, "Oh, he's gonna be able to get around this." I can tell.
Yeah. But I just want to
Um,
say that, like, whenever you ask me to describe the plot at the beginning of this podcast, I'm not bad at explaining plots normally. I just like I try and think about this plot, and like it was just so convoluted, and there was just so much they were trying to explain in such a small amount of time that like I was having a hard time paying attention to almost anything.
yeah,
It
Like it
is
was
very
so
funny because from
crazy.
him leaving the Matrix to him going back in at the end to try to save Trinity, it's almost purely just people like giving exposition to him for like 40 minutes of like, he's like,
Yeah,
here's what's happened since you were gone. Here's what happened to the new Zion and the old Zion. Here's what happened to Morpheus. Like, it was just
yeah.
like reading a Wikipedia article.
Right. It's like I don't care about any of this. I don't want to know about
yeah.
anything you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very
Yeah.
hard to pay attention. And it's like, yeah, to describe the plot, it's like, okay, the first hour is a rehash of the trilogies for
Hmm.
and it's not even like a smart rehash. Like when the agent guy comes back, or when the new agent Smith stands up, he goes, "Hello, Mr. Anderson." And then Keanu Reeves looks at him. He goes, "Smith?" And then the guy puts on his glasses. And then it cuts to a scene from the original trilogy of Agent Smith. It's like, yeah, we got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and they do that multiple times. Like with Morpheus, he goes, "Oh, I'm Morpheus," and then he
Yeah.
goes like he puts on the glasses, and then it still cuts to the other. It's like you're not even, you have the same name.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are you showing us this?
Yeah,
That's
I
just
don't
ridiculous.
know. And I don't even like I wasn't like the new Morpheus. I don't know if it was like they just wanted to like keep Lawrence Fishburne's character dead. But it's kind of weird because they make him a big deal at the beginning and then he's just kind of gone for the rest of the
Yeah.
movie. I don't know. It's like
Yeah.
Totally.
they wanted to use him, then they're like, never mind. Not
Well,
Yeah. We don't
this.
really know how to do this.
and then they
Yeah.
at one point they go, "Oh well, this new Morpheus is he's an anagram of the original Morpheus and also Agent Smith."
Hmm.
And that literally never comes into play except for one point at the beginning where Morpheus is dressed like an agent. But even then, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. Like, why include that? Why include that if you're going to have a separate character that's also Agent Smith? And
Right.
why include that if this Morpheus Smith guy isn't going to like be conflicted about the choices he has to make?
Yeah. Totally. He didn't have any
Like,
depth at all.
yeah, like Rick and Morty's Abraham Hitler should not have more of conflict than your Agent Smith Morpheus character.
Right. Two of the most
The
famous
central
characters.
character of your trilogy, yeah, or
Yeah.
central antagonist. Yeah, it was rough. I don't know. It was also very like, you know what I did actually like, and kind of going back to the beginning, how it's like, you know how in the 90s, like the idea of like a cool hacker was like a guy in like a leather trench coat, and then it's like now like it's like all the hackers and like game guys are just like nerds who say like BT dubs, let's go to the
Yeah,
coffee shop. I'm like, oh, that's kind of clever. But then when they go back in the Matrix later, everyone's just in leather again. So I'm like, oh, they never mind.
yeah,
They didn't really keep up with that idea.
right,
Yeah.
It's
right.
so half baked.
Yeah.
And again, like it comes down to that thing. Like I would have liked if this movie was about Neo like being stuck in like in the original Matrix and everyone else has kind of moved on and he has to go visit like the old characters to see what the people who like are just stuck there, like the fucking Italian guy and Agent Smith. That would have been cool. Like that would have been a cool idea, and they kind of do it,
Yeah.
but it like I don't know because they have that
Basically,
scene
like
that's
you're saying, like take the first 40 minutes, but make the whole movie kind of that until he gets out.
yeah, or make another movie where something interesting happens.
Yeah. This should have been like a series. This should have been like 10 episodes of like
Yeah,
something,
yeah,
like a limited
Yeah,
Matrix series, which that could have
yeah.
been pretty sick.
yeah. That could have been cool. Well, and like okay, so Lena Wachowski is making this one by herself. And
Yeah.
at the beginning, they have the scene that pretty much tells you why she made it, where it's like Neil Patrick Harris, and they're going to in this movie they're going to reboot the video game Matrix that Neo has made,
Hmm.
and Neo is like, I don't want to work on this, but they told me if I don't, they're going to do it anyways, so I don't
Right.
want anyone touching my baby, which is
Yeah.
basically what this is.
Absolutely. Totally.
And so if she's clearly saying like, oh yeah, I didn't want to make this movie, but they're making me. It's like, okay, well then, but why did you make things that like are clear callbacks to the like why didn't you try anything new or interesting? Say what you will about the sequels, they fucking go for it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally.
Like I
yeah.
remember after the third one came out and people were like, "Oh man, now they can make Dragon Ball because no one's ever seen like people flying and fighting in the air like that." And it's like, yeah,
Mhm.
not all of it works, but so much of it is like I think that's the difference in the original trilogy. Even when like the architect won't shut up, I at least
Yeah.
want to know what he's saying.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like there's something new in every movie that you're kind of like, okay, this is like I've never seen like something like the highway chase in part two. It's like I've never seen something like that
Yeah,
before,
Right. So
you
cool.
know. And in
and
this
And like
movie,
even
it's
both
like I've seen
when.
all of this in the Matrix.
yeah,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with one of the another problem with this movie, William, is that yeah, in the original Matrix, it's kind of like a philosophy. Like it's like the philosophy is like, why are we here, and do our actions matter?
Yeah.
Because
Free will versus
if we're all
choice.
in a video game, what difference does it make? And each character comes to like a different conclusion to that answer. And this
Yeah.
one is just kind of like, oh hey, what is like how like it's like Lena Wachowski is holding on to the last thing she has left, but that's not that interesting because
Yeah.
I don't know, just let it go. I think.
Right, I was kind of trying to like think of like how that kind of like played into the discussions of like free will versus not free will, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like there was one part where I think it was towards the beginning when they were talking about reboots and like they were meditating on like are reboots worth anything and like what is all this social media and they make the Facebook joke and like all these kind of like oh the times these days are so weird kind of jokes and it's like I feel like what Lana was kind of trying to do or like maybe like she was talking like when it comes to like free will it's like society you can't really choose what society is going to be like
Hmm.
and we don't have a choice in that we have no free will in like how the world at large behaves but we do have she has a choice in how she can behave within this matrix aka the Hollywood system or just technology in general and I thought that was kind of interesting but I also think that I was like really reaching for like some
Right.
kind of like
Right.
yeah. You're
neutral
like
answer
you
but I
need
don't even know if
something.
that
No,
makes
I agree.
yeah
Yeah, it's a good idea that just doesn't really go for it though. I don't know. None
Well,
of the
and
ideas
yeah
really connect.
afterwards I was
totally
reading and I read that like the year before, whenever she was writing this, she lost like her mom and her dad and like someone else,
oh
and
really
yeah, and she was talking about how like yeah, so I was like grieving through all this, and I'm the only thing I had left was like Neo and Trinity. And you do kind of feel that a
whoa
little bit where it's like it kind of feels like someone who's tried to push these people away, and now they're like grabbing on to them because I don't know. It's just like originally, I don't see the Lena who made this movie killing Neo and Trinity like she did in the last one,
Yeah, for
because
sure.
like there's it's like we've mentioned Gremlins 2, and like if you're gonna make a Gremlins 2, you kind of have to not give that much of a shit about the characters.
Yeah,
You gotta pull a Joe Dante. Like Joe Dante redoes the creepy Santa scene in Gremlins 2, but now it's like he turns it into a joke because it's like Columbus Day.
Yeah.
And it's
yeah,
like
God.
you kind of have to shit on your characters to make us like a parody sequel type of thing where you're shitting on the franchise. And it's like Lena Wachowski wants to do a Gremlins 2 type movie, but she loves these characters too much, or at least she's
yeah,
scared to criticize them anymore. And I think that that's why you kind of get this weird jumbled
Yeah, it's like
mindset.
half
like
of one, half of,
yeah,
yeah, it does not, the two halves do not mix, and that is very accurate. How good is
yeah,
Gremlins 2 though?
I mean, it's so good. And like there was like a scene where it's like when the architect, the new architect, is talking to Neo, and they're kind of like he's kind of telling Neo like, "Oh, can you save her? Like, is that even possible? And if it's not like if you don't save her, or if you let her die and you try to take control, we're just going to repeat this again. So stop trying to take control because you're just going to end up back at square zero like a nothing who's living in a
hmm,
fake world." And there's something interesting there where it's like Neo can't escape it, but
yeah,
then like it makes the ending seem even more hollow because again you're like every movie takes more and more of the stakes out.
That was
yeah,
also like, I like the climax of the movie is him walking in to like negotiate with Neil Patrick Harris, the analyst. But it's
yeah,
like I don't really understand the stakes of
yeah,
what anyone's trying to achieve and could achieve. Like
Yeah.
yeah,
like it was so vague of like, oh, he wants to escape with Trinity, obviously, but I don't understand why the architect can't stop him or is letting him try. It was just, I don't know.
yeah.
Well,
I
and
was so
It was
lost
a
in that
mess.
part of the movie for sure.
And like
Like,
they like bring in the other Neo's team to be like, they'll be here to show I keep my word. I'm like, how though? I don't, none of this
yeah,
is working. So,
right,
well, and they have like yeah, because they come in, but even at the movie, okay, so Neo wants to get Trinity out. Um, that's his motivation. The other kid's motivation is to save Neo, and then um, Agent Smith's motivation is just to kind of hang around and maybe take over, maybe not. But like I don't like in the original Matrix, the motivation of every character was to save the human race.
yeah,
And none of them
yeah.
like they don't even really want to save people from the Matrix. It seems they just want to save these two people,
right.
and even then they kind of give up on saving Trinity like immediately.
I know Bugs is like so like I don't is that even Trinity? Like
Yeah,
it's probably not her, dude. Like just shut the fuck up.
yeah. What
Like
the fuck, Bugs?
yeah, why are you shitting on this so hard?
Yeah.
So weird.
And then like yeah, and you know what the weirdest part was? At one point when they meet the crew, Bugs's crew, there's like they meet everyone, and then there's like an actor or African American girl, and she's like, "Oh, I'm the Australian captain's great granddaughter or whatever." And he's like, "Oh, he never believed in you." But like in the original trilogy, there was that commander who ran Zion, and he
Yeah,
like was 100% against Neo being like the one, and he was like also in love with Jada Pinkett Smith, and he
yeah.
was he was African American and he was black. It's like why didn't you just make him the
Like still around.
grandfather? Like why did you make it some random white guy?
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
It
it's
was
I
such
Yeah,
a
don't,
he
weird
was
like
major. He was
kind of a
major in this
weird
this
casting. They
movie.
just wanted to use that actor, I guess. I don't
And
know.
the only reason, well, they didn't even use that actor. It was so because I wanted, like, I went back and I was like, wait, that was his name? Because I thought that it was that captain who was like the leader of Zion. And I was like, oh, it's the Australian guy? What the fuck? Why would you? I don't even remember
Who
this
was the
guy existed.
Australian guy?
He was the guy who he goes to save Jada Pinkett Smith, and he's like, you can't take my ship. And then Jada, he like is no, he has a he's of no service in the original trilogy.
Is he only in Revolutions?
No, he's in both of them, but he only has that. He's in the scene in Reloaded where they're all in the warehouse and they're just kind of talking, and he has like one line, and then
Oh, at
you
the
don't see
beginning.
him again
Yeah.
Mm,
until
yeah.
yeah.
You're like, he
Huh.
was one of the extras in the orgy.
And that
Yeah.
again,
That's what she was confused.
and again, that doesn't like it would make such more sense to make it the leader of Zion because he's in like a lot of the movie constantly crying. So he's always trying to shut things down. Also,
Yeah,
at
he's
one
very
point, he's like, "I would,
pro-military.
if it was up to me, I'd have every man, woman, and child out there."
Yeah.
And then they're like, "Good thing it's not up to you." And he's like, "We'll see." And it's like, "No, that's a bad idea.
Yeah, you're kind of a dictator. I don't know.
You definitely shouldn't have
This,
children out on this battlefield against robots."
this movie also does something that they did in Reloaded that I did. I even watching. I've only seen Reloaded like a couple of times because I wasn't like huge on it, but they do the thing where it sounds like they're going to set up a super complicated heist like type thing where things will go wrong. And in Reloaded, it's to rescue the Keymaker, and in this,
Yeah.
it's like to get access to Trinity's pod. But instead of like being like, okay, here's how risky it is, and here's like the misadventures and how it like changed, it just works. Like as they're explaining the
They're
heist,
good at
you
planning.
just see that like they did it perfectly with no like
Yeah.
tension. You're like, oh, okay, that's
Yeah. Like they
All
took
right.
the course from Danny Ocean like online, and they're just like masterminds.
right.
Also, watching Reloaded again, and if you remember that the Jada Pinkett part, like her whole thing is the only way you know what happens is if you play the video game is still so hilarious
Oh
to
yeah,
me.
which no one did, and they also
Oh
brought
yeah.
in like one of the characters in Zion was one of the kids from the Animatrix that he saves or something like that.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
Mm,
they loved
they
doing the
love
tie-ins. It
because
was the
well,
original
and
MCU.
yeah. Yeah.
because in this one they bring in that Pinkrush Chopra girl, and she plays Santi, who was the little
Yeah.
girl on the
In the
train.
train station. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like I thought she was gonna be like the new Oracle, and she
Me too.
kind of is, but she's not. Like, why would you bring this character back and do nothing with her?
Yeah. She just apologized.
Yeah,
That was her big thing.
like
Yeah, it was not great.
it
Yeah.
was such a weird, like, and then like again, like if they had shown more of Trinity with her family, and like maybe Trinity has like a good family, she loves her kids, and she has a good life, so to make that choice a lot harder,
Right. Give
you
her
know?
some visions. Like let us
Yeah,
see her emotional turmoil and like her like memories that are stuck in her head somehow.
yeah. Or if they had made like if it had been centered around Trinity, and then instead of Bugs, you have it be Neo, and so Neo is like breaking into the Matrix trying to save Trinity, and Trinity's like, I don't want to live in a fucking desert wasteland. I have a hot husband.
Right. And
I have a
yeah.
Chad husband. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, to give her like a real choice. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, really, just these are all ideas that would have been better than like them fighting the Frenchman in the warehouse for like 20 minutes.
Right.
You
All
know,
of his
yeah.
like
there's
his yellings, I was just like, dude, we know, we get it.
yeah, and he's yelling about how much sequels suck. It's like I know you're proving it. I
Yeah,
don't,
thank you.
it's like I get it. You're telling me this is bad on purpose. I don't
Or
know.
like they have that train sequence, and like I like the idea that now you can just well, because they're like, oh, now the agents can just take over like a guy whenever they want. I was like, I thought that was always what they could do.
Yeah, that hasn't changed at all.
Yeah, but
Wasn't
it's
that
like,
what?
oh, but now it's like they're not even agents. They just become like zombies, kind of, which
But
seems
would it?
less effective.
Yeah, it seemed
Yeah.
like the Terminator situation where it's like, no, but wouldn't it be easier to like? I thought the point of them looking like agents was they're stronger and faster. But now they're
Yeah.
just like the regular guys that can be beaten like because they're like little kids and
Yeah.
stuff
They're like
fighting. It seemed,
putties from the Power Rangers, essentially.
yeah.
Oh man, they are.
So it's like, why would you have a less effective villain?
That was
Yeah.
also like because part of the there's a lot of ideas in this movie that could have been good, but the just editing and action was just bad. But like where they're trying to get Neo and Trinity on the motorcycle, so they're like having people like suicide jump out of like skyscrapers to try to like land on them, like as they race
Yeah.
through the city. but there's like a scene where like this woman wakes like up and her husband is doing it and she's like screaming. I'm like, wait, so are the people doing it just like mindless like robots, or are some of them activated and some aren't? I don't know. It was such a like, you guys didn't even think what this means. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I feel like they were just like watching Magnolia, and they were just like, "I love those frogs falling down, so let's just get people to do that shit."
Just do it.
Yeah, the Matrix William H Macy is out there just trying to get his money for his braces. Smacked by some kid jump out of his window.
I would have rather watched that movie. Just
Yeah,
if they had just put on Magnolia in the middle of the movie,
yeah,
better.
They're just watching it in the
Let's do
background.
this.
yeah. And
Yeah.
now,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the fact that the action was so disappointing was such a weird, like,
That's like the one thing I
I
thought
mean,
would still be like good, even if the rest of the movie didn't work. But that was the biggest like
yeah,
downfall.
and I'm wondering if it's because Lena, like, oh, I was always in charge of the philosophy aspect, but
yeah,
it was my sister who was in charge of the other part, and it's like, oh,
right.
that makes
Yeah,
that
I
So
think
makes
it
more
was like
sense.
they couldn't get the original
Lily.
choreographer back from the
Oh well,
mm,
or something. I don't know. It might have
but
been even just like a COVID thing, but it was still very
oh yeah,
noticeably bad.
I
Yeah.
yeah.
mean, even if you couldn't, you could. I mean, there's other choreographers. You could get the guy who did the raid.
Oh
If
yeah,
you're, if you're gonna do it close up,
No man. Agreed.
yeah. That'd have been so sick.
I know. And and it was just like, especially because both Keanu Reeves and Carrie Ann Moss, like they're still in pretty good shape. It's not like, oh, well, we
Yeah,
don't. It's not like The Irishman where it's clear that it's like an old man.
I mean,
right.
yeah, he still does those John Wick movies. It's like he could have
Yeah,
Yeah,
even just
totally.
done like that. Yeah.
it's also weird that Neo never like picks up a gun, which someone pointed out on Twitter. I was like, oh yeah, that's
Huh.
weird.
Oh yeah, I didn't even notice that.
I did like one of the scenes I did like was the scene where they're like, "Hey Neo, can you fly us out of here?" And he
Oh
tries.
yeah,
Yeah,
no,
that
that's not
actually was
funny.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, that was
I
pretty
mean,
funny.
there's like little hints.
Yeah. So something that I kind of wanted to talk about, it's like, you know, it was like my main takeaway in a way was like, so you think about, I was thinking about the Matrix One in terms of like the Wachowskis' like entire career afterwards.
Ouvra.
Hoorah, yeah. And it's like the Matrix One is like dark, grungy, and all the magical people live in like, a tenement home kind of building. And it's very Fight Club esque, kind of like Dark City, like that whole 90s vibe. And then everything else that they've done after that, even the sequels, were just like so colorful and like so wild and out there.
Yeah,
And if you think about, I've read little snippets from like the original Matrix script, and it was very much like Jupiter Ascending type stuff or like Speed Racer type stuff. So I wonder if like the studio was just like, no, dude, we want you to make Fight Club the cyberpunk thriller, and then after that, we'll see what we can do afterwards. And so like, I wonder if like the Wachowskis even like really like dig the first Matrix movie because it doesn't really seem like they've ever wanted to do that ever again. And it's like maybe, and this is all theoretical, like maybe the studio just kind of got it right once and like made them make this like perfect film, but it wasn't really what they ever wanted to do, which is why their other movies are just nothing like the original Matrix.
yeah, yeah.
I,
You
I
bring up a
could
good
see
point, and I
it. Yeah.
wonder if it's kind of like how like Blink 182 has that song that's like "Don't wait for me," really.
Yeah,
And then all their other stuff is like punk rock, like very different type of sound. And I wonder if
yeah,
maybe that's what the Matrix is to the Wachowskis is like, oh yeah, this was our dark gritty movie, but we don't want to do that, you
yeah.
know?
We like
Yeah,
crazy flashes. We like people with crazy clothes and hair and like, just balls to the
yeah,
wall. Like they like loud, and the Matrix One is quiet in a weird way.
right, right. No,
Yeah.
it 100%.
It's
And it's kind of like, yeah, even if you look at like, I like Speed Racer a lot,
Yeah, totally.
but it's super colorful and it's super like optimistic in a way the Matrix is not.
Yeah, I would never guess that that was the Wachowskis if you hadn't
Yeah,
told me. If I'd only seen the Matrix One and then Speed Racer, I would have nothing to connect the two.
yeah, yeah. It's such a weird, like, yeah, even what, I don't know what they want to be making, and I don't know if they know.
I know they really need to make
I,
more series because their ideas are just like they're just too big. Resurrections was
Yeah.
just it was too big, and I was interested, but just how much information was being thrown at us, and like Josh kind of pointed out, it's like they're just exposing things for like 40 minutes. It's just like
Yeah.
you know that no one wants to see that, and it's like
Right.
I'm sure there is some like super deep Matrix wiki
yeah,
updating like nerd who's like taking notes during that part, but it's
oh
like,
yeah,
yeah, I'm not.
But
yeah,
even then, it's not like in Reloaded when the architect is talking, you kind of see what the metaphor they're going for is. But in here, the metaphor is hard to find because I feel like it's so personal to Lena that
yeah,
it doesn't affect us. It's kind of like that
right,
Tracy. It's like in 30 Rock where Tracy Morgan tries to go back to stand up and he's like, "Isn't it weird how lobster is too expensive?" Like
yeah,
nobody can relate to you, dude.
yeah.
Yeah.
Have I lost my touch with the people?
Yeah,
Yes,
Yeah.
good.
yeah, because
Yeah, I
it's like
can I can see that too. Yeah, it feels very personal, but then it's like you can't make it a satire then. Yeah, it's just what do you want?
yeah,
It
because
does
like
really feel
basically,
like she didn't want to
Yeah,
have action in it though, and I almost wonder if like they're like you have to have action scenes, so she did it
I think
begrudgingly.
that was
hmm
100%.
It
totally.
was the Sam Raimi putting in Venom in Spider-Man 3 where it's like, fine, I'm gonna make it bad. Fuck you.
Yeah,
And he'll do it ironically.
yeah. I'm gonna walk down the street
Yeah.
in no style at all.
Which is like, I think that's funny, but that doesn't mean I enjoy watching it. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it is that thing where like in Spider-Man 3 there's a famous scene where he's like walking down the street and
Yeah.
then like Sam Raimi was like, "Oh yeah, the reason I did that was cuz in Peter's mind a bad boy would still be kind of dorky." And it's like, "Yeah, I understand that,
Yeah.
Sam. It's still cringy scene. Like I still
Yeah.
don't want to see it on screen."
Totally get both. Yeah.
Like you still did a bad job with it.
Yeah.
And I wonder if it's kind of the same with this like cuz even the stuff like again like the first therapy scene where she's explaining why she hates doing a sequel, it's like okay, I understand, but this scene is still so long. Like why?
Yeah. Yeah. The first like hour and a half, like not much happens. Like there are some funny scenes and like there is the therapy stuff and we're setting it all up, but once they got to Zion for the first time and they were about to like start doing some action stuff or whatever, I was like, okay, this has probably been about like 45 minutes. And like I looked at the time, it had been like an hour and a half. And I was just like, oh my
Right.
god, like it did feel this long, but I
See, and that's
knew
part of
it
the
was worth it.
problem is though, and I actually like that it's super slow at the beginning, but then the second half, it's like jumping super fast, like
Yeah,
everything is happening. I'm just like, okay, this is super bad pacing too.
Well,
yeah,
and I had the same reaction that William had where like near the end when they're like planning or when they're like, "Oh, we're going to go talk to the architect." I was like, "Wait, is this movie already over? Like nothing's
yeah,
fucking happened."
Yeah.
yeah.
Like what the fuck? And then I did like how there was like two different scenes where Smith and Neo like make a pact to work together.
For that one
And
scene.
then yeah, and then they're like, yeah, we're teaming up and it's like you'd think of Neo and Smith teamed up it would be cooler than just kind of oh, he kind of helps a little bit and then that's it.
Yeah,
Yeah. I think Hugo Weaving could have made that work, but
yeah,
Yeah.
just the impact of him showing up, but I don't know.
I mean, Hugo Weaving saying no when he said yes to like all the Transformers and a bunch of nonsense is like, okay, there's a problem here.
yeah.
Well, I heard it was just a scheduling conflict. I don't know if it was
It
like an artistic difference.
Mm,
Yeah, because and like bringing Smith back, it's the same thing as remaking Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, where it's like you're gonna miss him. Like you miss Smith
yeah,
the whole time, even like though half the characters are playing an anagram of Smith. You're like,
yeah,
okay, but is Hugo Weaving coming out or what?
yeah,
Yeah, it just yeah. I mean, I don't think any of us wanted to dislike it, and I personally like I I mean, trying to figure out what Lena wanted to do was been interesting and like learning about the grief and stuff. And I mean, I commend her for taking the her characters and kind of like exploring them in a way that hadn't been explored before, but it just doesn't come together in any real way.
yeah, yeah. I agree. The end product was just
Yeah, that's the tricky part is I'm not even gonna be like, oh, this was like completely terrible. It's like this is like one third of a good movie and two thirds of a completely different movie. I don't know.
yeah,
It's just
Yeah, it's three good ideas put into one movie, and they don't finish any of them.
right.
yeah.
It was just too much, and I feel like that happens a lot. And whenever like Ridley Scott's movies come out, and it's like the theatrical cut, and everyone's just like, yeah, this sucks. And then like the director's cut comes out, and it's like, yeah, this is better.
Yeah.
It's like I feel like it's just so easy for people to like lose sight of like what they can actually make work in like 2.5 hours, and they just have so many what they think are sick ideas, and it just ends up just you just don't know what happened, and it's like this. I don't know. I feel like that's why the limited series things are so cool these days, and I really think that would have benefited from that. I think that
Yeah.
let's spread this out. Let's really get in. Then they could have brought Trinity in more. They could have done a lot, and it
Yeah, they
just
could have
felt like
almost had
this
like
was
one episode focusing on a different character each time.
yeah.
Been like, yeah, look at
People would
these
have liked that.
guys.
No
Yeah.
one could go
Yeah,
to the movies anyways.
I would have been down for it, and
Yeah.
also get a fight choreographer.
Yeah. It's like we're
Yeah,
watching this on HBO Max either way, so just fucking make it 6 hours.
right.
Yeah.
You'll get more traffic. Everyone wins.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? It kind of like once I started thinking of it as instead of like a sequel, as like an Elseworlds tale. It
Oh
was
what?
like we're taking what we want and we're kind of leaving everything else behind. I was like, it's not as bad. And it definitely like again, like even if she had just made it Trinity and Neo adjacent, and it was about two new characters. It was
Yeah,
about Bugs and Brinity. would have I would have liked it
yeah,
more. Like there were just so many ways she could have gone if she really felt the way she felt about making this sequel. And so it's hard to like find any connection to this film.
yeah. It was such a unique set of problems that like no
Yeah,
other
I'm
no
I'm
other
wondering
movie
if too
has come
they
close
really
to it.
wanted a studio release, so that's why they were like, no, it has to be a movie.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like
So
it had to be something like that too. I
I
get
don't
I
that.
know.
can't even imagine watching this in theaters and being like, "What the fuck? Why are we watching the old movies?"
Yeah, dude, if we weren't doing this podcast, I don't think I would have finished it, or like at least would have been on my
Yeah.
phone a lot more. I would have just been like, yeah, I'm gonna get some Taco Bell. I'll be back.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
worst part was I was pretty excited because I remember
Yeah,
watching the first trailer and being like, "Oh, I forgot how much I love like wire work and like doing all the crazy stunts
right.
when like Morpheus is running on the wall." And
Yeah,
then watching it in a movie, like that scene is actually like zoomed in 1,000 points and like all you see is his crotch and it's like this sucks.
yeah. Where's this crotch? Is
Yeah.
it on the wall?
And then
Yeah.
they like literally played White Rabbit, and then Bugs also has a White Rabbit tattoo.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
you're ready to
all
see
oh man,
the.
and then the end credits is a cover of the Rage
Oh
Against the
yeah,
Machine song. Oh, dog shit.
That was a good metaphor for the entire
yeah, yeah.
thing.
Seriously. Oh
Yeah.
man, yeah. When I first heard like those dun 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 dun, I was like, oh hell yeah, and then I was like, oh,
Yeah, there was. I
Yeah.
feel like there was a moment for that for all of us because I remember watching the opening and it cuts to like the green Warner Brothers logo and then the green like vintage whatever the other company is, and I was like, oh man, I forgot how much I missed this. And then
yeah,
it immediately cuts to just like the back lot of Warner's television, and I was like, oh, so this is what we're watching.
yeah.
Yeah, it's that's also because in the original they even used some sets from Dark City. So in this one they're using discarded sets from other things. So that's the connection.
This time they're
Mm,
using sets from the Jefferson High School play of the Death of a Salesman.
yeah,
Neo Loman was a good man.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I probably wouldn't watch it again.
And I
Although,
Yeah,
don't like I hope that she's gotten whatever she needed to get out with this, and I hope there's no more sequels, like
I
honestly.
know. I wonder if there will be.
yeah, I mean, I
It,
don't know if it did well. I don't know if any of the split streaming ones do well, and they'll like
Yeah,
mandate a sequel. So who knows?
I mean,
I'll tell you
it got a
something. I'll tell you something
66%
after
on Rotten
this.
Tomatoes, so some people
Yeah,
liked it, I guess.
yeah. I mean, it's getting good reviews, and apparently, like it has a lot of trans fans.
Yeah,
I do understand that. I mean, and I
totally.
kind of understand because that's the big
Well,
metaphor.
and
Yeah,
to end it on a positive note, one of the things I did like about not just this movie, but this movie nails it hard, but the other movies is that the Matrix trilogy has always been about consent and how important consent is, whether it's taking the blue pill or the red pill, whether it's Trinity having to decide in this one. They
oh yeah,
make a very big point about like,
yeah,
oh, it has to be consent, and when
yeah.
you realize
Freedom of
that
choice.
both, yeah, when you realize both the Lukowskis are trans, the meaning and the importance of consent means so much more because it's like, yeah, I mean, they have to,
Right.
they're on a journey and they have to make it, and it's a tough one.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did like that, even
Hmm.
if
Well, and that's kind of another
it's
like to me that's like it's like okay, that's actually a really like powerful thing and like a good idea, but you also can't have that be half of your Gremlins 2 movie. It's just like that's just undermining the
Yeah.
message if you're saying also sequels suck and this is
it's
shitty.
Right. Even though I'm giving a voice
it's
to a lot of people that I'm now friends with.
yeah, and thinking about it, it's like, oh yeah, you have to choose and make the choice, and that choice, there's nothing more important than that. But also, if you choose wrong, we'll just restart and go again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The
So
Wachowskis are definitely very. They're a lot more interesting than their other movies. Like just as people, like they just
Yeah,
have had such a
yeah, it's
wide
almost like
range
I
and it's
almost
been so
like
public
their big
and everybody's such
ideas
a
better
big
than the
fan.
movies that they end up with half the time.
Yeah. Like I would read Jupiter Ascending the book.
yeah,
Yeah, no, it's like I
Yeah.
really like what you're trying in Jupiter Ascending.
Yeah.
Just
yeah.
don't
It
make
is.
me
It
watch
is.
it.
It
Yeah.
is 100% like they get bogged down with all the like details they're putting into it that they kind of
Hmm.
lose sight of the actual story.
Yeah. One person that I was reading, they said that to really make sense of Jupiter Ascending or the Matrix Resurrection, it's like you probably have to have a calculator and go back and like really look through the script. And it's like
Right.
technically the Wachowskis made everything correct. They made it airtight, but you have to do the work to like figure it out. But it's just not interesting at all to like go and like figure it out. It's like I don't want to do this, and I just
Yeah,
have
and
to
I
assume that this is an airtight script, even though it doesn't make any fucking sense.
right, and it does kind of become that thing where it's like, yeah, for me to want to go back, your movie, like I remember like being on horror Twitter, and there's a bunch of people who are like, after I watched Halloween Kills 4 times, I started to appreciate it, and it's like the fact that it took you 4 times to even like that movie a little bit kind of shows that you shouldn't have watched it 4 fucking times. Like,
Yeah,
To me,
we're all for being positive on this podcast, but that doesn't mean you have to lie to yourself.
it's kind of
yeah.
like this isn't the Wachowskis, but did you ever see the Donnie Darko director's cut where it like explains the science of Donnie
No, I don't think
Darko?
so.
It's
I
I
did
really
like
got to
try.
watch that.
it's like the more you explain and the more exposition I have to like what the magic is, the less interesting this is. Whereas if you just kept it tight and like kind of kept some mystery there, but it's like they cannot help themselves. They're like, no. Here's what everything means.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right. And then you have the Matrix One versus the Matrix Two and Three.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's why I never explain shit in my movies. They're like, Andrew, why is your movie so bad? I'm like, I'm not gonna tell
figure it
you.
out.
You're like, you figure it out.
Yeah, watch it 4 times and come back to me.
Read Marx and then come back to me, and I'll
Yeah,
tell you why it's bad. But yeah, yeah. I mean, listen, I wanted to like this movie, but
same.
there was just
Yeah, I went in like being like, all right, people are saying this is amazing. Please, like, I'm hyped, and then it just was like,
Yeah,
come on, guys.
don't do
you
this
know,
to me.
yeah. I was
Yeah,
like, I know, my mind is telling me that this is a good movie, but after being out of the Matrix for 8 years, I realized I don't care.
yeah, it was over.
Yeah.
They should
But
have they
no,
should have brought back Joey Pants.
they
That would have helped.
he's like, hey, it's me, Joe
He's like
Pants.
they brought me back to life too for some reason, and
Yeah,
they're
hello.
just eating steaks together and loving
He,
it.
he's like, I brought back Tank. He says he doesn't need the money anymore. He's okay with whatever you want to pay
It's
him.
like $100,000. Okay.
Cool dude.
Whatever it is. But yeah, I mean, yeah, if you like this movie, I'm sure there's a million different ways to interpret it. So I don't blame you if you found something you could connect to. I personally didn't, and I don't like random meta moments that don't lead anywhere. But William, any last thoughts on the Matrix rebooted?
I mean, my main thought was just I just really wonder what the Wachowskis think of the Matrix One, and I think that watching this
Yeah.
one really made me ponder that. And I think that they are very talented filmmakers, and I know that it was just one of them this time. But I don't know. I think that in a way they're kind of in the wrong medium for what they want to do,
Hmm.
and I wonder where they, if there's some way that they can get their cool ideas across to us and make them like just really like soar in a way that they've never really been able to do before.
Yeah, yeah. I
That's
feel
my
like
main criticism.
if Lena just stuck to writing animes and Lily just became like a DP, it would be perfect for these
Yeah,
two.
they should totally make anime. Yeah,
Yeah. Like, yeah, if they had written this as an anime, I can guarantee you it would have been a million times better.
yeah, absolutely.
Right, but you would have never read it because you don't read anime. So it's like I could see why they'd want to reach a wider audience, even
Well,
if
every
it's.
time I
Yeah,
read
for
anime,
sure.
it starts at the end.
Okay.
That's a joke about reading anime incorrectly,
I
guys.
get it.
But I mean,
Hey, did either of
We're
you
random.
know? Did either of you know there was an after the credits scene, or did you
Oh
just
no, I
turn
did.
it?
oh
I did.
god,
I
yeah,
stopped
The
it.
only reason I did was because I went to the bathroom and let the credits play, and then my fiance was like, "Oh, there's an after the credits scene." I'm like, "That's fine. I'm not coming out of the bathroom
yeah,
to watch
What
it."
was it?
It's just like the marketing team from the beginning being like, "What if we do the Matrix reboot but with cats and call it the Catrix?" So
oh
you
Okay.
didn't miss
goodness,
Well,
anything.
yeah, nope.
You,
well, that's
you
good.
you missed a joke from 2003 that would have
Right,
been stale in
I
yeah,
2003.
mean, to
yeah,
be fair, The Matrix takes place in 1999, so that's
See,
ahead of its time.
it doesn't actually takes place in the far future.
I know, but The Matrix
yeah.
itself takes place in
Oh,
1999.
yeah, I guess
The
that's
the
no, but the
the
I
current one
like the
program
takes
takes
human
place
place
in
in
civilization.
2021. At least everyone has smartphones.
Also, I know we just wrapped up, but how weird was it that Jada Pinkett Smith is like 1,000 years old now? What the hell?
Well, it's supposed to be 60 years later, which they should
Yeah,
have just made it 20 years later because that's how much time has passed, and that would
Yeah.
have made sense because Neo thinks it's been roughly 20 years since the Matrix. It's a mess.
and then people had masks on in the train.
Yeah, I saw
Yeah,
that too, but
That was weird.
I thought that that was
because it's in Japan.
because it was in Japan. Yeah.
They've been doing
Oh,
that for like 20 years. Yeah, because
oh, gotcha,
they're
gotcha.
smarter than us.
Yeah, because they had cherry blossoms in the background.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
I put that together now.
I
It's
did
cool.
notice that too, and I came to that same conclusion. But
Yeah,
yeah, Matrix Resurrections on HBO Max. I would, if you want to watch it, I would say go ahead. I mean, The Matrix is. I think all of us love The Matrix.
yeah,
It's just I don't know what this one was trying to do, but
right.
yeah.
It's worth
So
watching, of
yeah, so William, thank you for coming back.
course.
This was the podcast exclusive, guys. If next week I think we're gonna do our year end best of the worst. So it's just gonna be the Matrix
Our
guys to
top
end this
45
week.
movies.
Our top 2021 films.
I don't even know if I've seen 45 movies this year.
We have to pick
Yeah,
one. Yeah. Guess what, guys? Fast Nine's gonna be on there. But we'll see you guys next week, and this is gonna save us time so Andrew can get out of copyright strike jail. See you next week.
bye, bye.